The sleek glass headquarters of the Memory Architects Unit towered over Neo Hanoi, its reflective surfaces capturing the last rays of sunset. Inside, Dr. Lam An stood before the Executive Council, hands clasped behind his back to hide their slight trembling. At 32, he was the youngest architect ever nominated to lead a pioneer project. The promotion had come as a surprise. His experimental memory landscapes had always been considered too unconventional, too risky for mainstream implementation. Dr. Lam An, Director Trin's voice echoed across the circular chamber. Your work on cognitive spatial dynamics has impressed us. The Council believes you're ready for greater responsibility. An bowed slightly, maintaining the professional demeanor expected in the unit. I'm honored, Director. The Memory City project requires someone with your unique perspective. Director Trin's thin smile didn't reach his eyes. 10,000 volunteers await your architectural genius. Their minds are your canvas. The words sent an uncomfortable shiver down An's spine. He had joined the Memory Architects to create beautiful alternative worlds, not to experiment on human subjects. But in the overcrowded 22nd century, with Earth's resources stretched beyond capacity, virtual escapism had become necessity rather than luxury. The briefing materials have been uploaded to your neural interface, Director Trin continued. We expect preliminary designs within the week. As An left the council chamber, his neural implant pinged with incoming files. The Memory City would be his masterpiece, a perfect digital world where 10,000 test subjects would live, while their physical bodies remained in stasis. The project documentation called it a social experiment in paradise conditions. But paradise, An knew, was subjective, and 10,000 minds meant 10,000 different versions of perfection. Back in his apartment, An projected the files onto his living room wall. Blueprints, psychological profiles, environmental parameters. The scope was enormous. He had created memory landscapes before, but never for more than 50 participants simultaneously. 10,000 was unprecedented. He flicked through the subject profiles. Factory workers, teachers, artists, ordinary people desperate to escape reality. Each had signed extensive waivers, surrendering their minds to the Memory Architects for 6 months. An paused on one file. And she, 29, psychological specialist. Unlike the others, she wasn't just a test subject but assigned as his project partner. Her expertise in collective memory patterns would complement his architectural skills. A notification flashed across his vision, and she had requested a meeting tomorrow morning. Sleep eluded him that night. In the darkness, memories of his own childhood flickered, fragmented images of a childhood home he could barely remember, faces that blurred when he tried to focus on them. Something about those memories had always felt wrong, incomplete. As a memory architect, he understood the malleable nature of recollection better than most. Yet his own past remained frustratingly opaque. Morning arrived with Neo Hanoi's characteristic acid rain pattering against his windows. An arrived at the lab early, reviewing the initial framework for Memory City. The system would need to be both flexible enough to adapt to individual preferences and stable enough to maintain coherence across thousands of connected minds. Dr. Lam An? He turned to find a woman watching him from the doorway. And she was taller than her profile had suggested, with intelligent eyes that seemed to evaluate him carefully. You must be the psychological specialist. An extended his hand. I was reviewing your research on collective memory harmonization. Impressive work. Thank you. Her handshake was firm. Though I admit I'm curious why I've been assigned as both consultant and test subject. That makes 2 of us, An replied. The council doesn't always share its reasoning. And she glanced around the lab, taking in the neural interface stations and holographic projectors. Have you worked on anything of this scale before? No one has, An admitted. 10,000 minds linked in a single memory construct is unprecedented. And potentially dangerous, she added quietly. The human mind isn't designed to share consciousness. An nodded. That's why we're building individual nodes within a collective framework. Each person maintains their own perspective while sharing the same constructed reality. In theory, and she said, but memory is contagious. Doctor, emotions, experiences, they bleed between connected minds. We've seen it in smaller experiments. An pulled up the initial designs, projecting them between them. That's why I've designed buffer zones, psychic firewalls, if you will, to prevent emotional contagion. The hologram showed a gleaming city of crystal towers interspersed with forests of swaying aspen trees. Rivers flowed between districts, creating natural boundaries. It's beautiful, and she admitted, but beauty doesn't ensure stability. That's where your expertise comes in, An said. I can build the world, but you'll help ensure the minds within it remain balanced. They spent the day refining the design, adjusting parameters to accommodate the psychological needs of 10,000 diverse participants. By evening, An felt a growing excitement. Memory City could be more than just another escape. It could be a genuine utopia, a template for a better reality. As Anchi prepared to leave, she hesitated. Have you noticed anything strange about the project parameters? An looked up. What do you mean? The emotional regulation protocols. She lowered her voice. They're far more restrictive than standard procedure. And there's a monitoring system embedded in the architecture that doesn't appear in any of the official documentation. An frowned, pulling up the relevant files. She was right. Hidden beneath layers of code were surveillance protocols he hadn't authorized. Someone's watching the watchers, he murmured. Exactly. And Chi's expression was grim. And I'm not convinced it's just for safety. I'll look into it, An promised. Carefully. After she left, An dug deeper into the code, uncovering more unauthorized modifications. Someone had integrated emotion harvesting algorithms, subtle programs designed to extract and analyze the subject's responses to specific stimuli. This went far beyond standard monitoring. It was psychic mining. A message flashed across his interface. Security anomaly detected. Terminal access revoked in 30 seconds. An quickly transferred the suspicious code segments to his personal neural storage before the system locked him out. Someone was monitoring his discovery, which meant his suspicions were correct. The Memory City project had hidden objectives. The next morning, An arrived to find a security officer stationed outside his lab. Inside, Director Trin waited, his thin smile more predatory than ever. Dr. Lam, he said smoothly. I understand you were working late last night. Initial designs required adjustments, An replied carefully. The emotional buffering systems needed recalibration. Indeed. Trin circled the lab slowly. The Council is pleased with your progress. So pleased, in fact, that we're accelerating the timeline. The first wave of subjects will be connected next week. Next week? An couldn't hide his shock. That's impossible. We need at least a month for stability testing. The decision is final, Trin said coldly. Your concerns have been noted and dismissed. You'll have additional resources to compensate for the shortened timeline. Among those resources was Le Quien, a systems specialist with a reputation for unorthodox methods. When he arrived later that day, An was surprised by his youthful appearance and casual demeanor. So you're the architect building our dream world, Keen said, examining the holographic model. Impressive. Though I spot at least 3 back doors in your security framework. An stiffened. Those aren't back doors. They're adaptive learning nodes. Call them what you want, Keen shrugged. But they could be exploited by someone who knows what they're looking for. He lowered his voice. Someone like me, for instance, or the Council's security team. Before An could respond, and she entered the lab, pausing when she saw Keen. You, she said flatly. Me, Keen replied with a mock bow. Still analyzing dreams. Dr. Enchi? You two know each other? An looked between them. We worked together on the DreamShare project, Enchi said stiffly. Before Kian decided to rewrite the parameters without authorization. I improved them, Keen corrected. Not my fault the bureaucrats couldn't appreciate innovation. An sensed there was more to the story. But now wasn't the time to dig into old conflicts. Whatever your history, we need to work together. The Council has moved up our timeline. As they collaborated over the following days, Anach noticed Keen's expertise went far beyond systems management. The young man had an uncanny ability to anticipate and circumvent security protocols, skills that suggested a background in less legitimate areas of neural programming. One evening, as they worked late, An decided to take a risk. I found unauthorized code in the Memory City framework, he said quietly. Surveillance systems, emotion harvesters. Keen didn't look surprised. They're in every project. The Council mines our dreams like data ore. You knew. Why do you think I was reassigned after DreamShare? Keen's expression darkened. I discovered they were extracting emotional patterns from the participants and using them to create targeted advertising algorithms. When I tried to expose it, they buried me in this department. What about the current project? An asked. Much worse, Keen replied. The scale alone should tell you that. 10,000 mines isn't a test group. It's a harvesting field. The revelation confirmed An's growing suspicions. That night, he accessed his own personnel file through Keen's backdoor channels. What he found shook him to his core. His own memories had been modified. Subtle alterations to his childhood recollections. Emotional responses recalibrated. Entire relationships erased. According to the unaltered records, he had once had a twin brother who had disappeared during a neural calibration accident when they were 10. The memory architects had not only erased his brother from his mind, but had systematically modified every memory that might trigger questions about the missing sibling. An sat in his darkened apartment, trying to reconcile what he now knew with what he remembered. How much of his passion for memory architecture had been genuine, and how much had been implanted to ensure his cooperation. The next morning, he shared his discovery with Enchi and Kian in a secure room Keen had certified as surveillance-free. They've been grooming you, Enchi said quietly, shaping you into the perfect architect for their purposes. But why? An's voice was hollow. Why erase my brother? Why manipulate my career path? Your file mentions exceptional neural plasticity, Keen said, scrolling through the stolen data. Your mind is unusually adaptable to memory modification. You and your brother both. They probably saw you as ideal test subjects. And now they want me to create a world for 10,000 more test subjects, An said bitterly. Which gives us an opportunity. And she leaned forward. If you're building the world, you can build in safeguards they don't know about, ways to protect the subjects, and possibly expose the Council's true intentions. It's too risky, Keen argued. If they catch us, they'll wipe us clean. Or worse. They've already taken my brother and my real memories, An said, a new determination hardening his voice. I won't let them do the same to thousands more. Over the next few days, the trio worked on 2 parallel versions of Memory City. The official version satisfied the Council's requirements, while a shadow version contained protected spaces where memories couldn't be harvested and surveillance couldn't penetrate. As the first wave of subjects were prepared for connection, An insisted on interviewing some of them personally. Most were eager to escape into the promised paradise, unaware of the hidden costs. But one elderly woman, Mrs. Mai, seemed different. When An showed her the preview of Memory City, she frowned. I've seen this place before, she said, pointing to a central plaza with a distinctive fountain. In dreams. Impossible, An said. We just designed it. Nevertheless, Mrs. Mai insisted. I've been there. In the dreams they don't erase. Further conversation revealed that Mrs. Mai had participated in earlier memory experiments. Unlike most subjects, she had developed techniques to preserve core memories despite the architect's attempts to modify them. "They take what they want from our minds," she told him. "Emotions, desires, fears, they harvest them like crops. Use them to shape the world outside." "For what purpose?" An asked. "Control," she said simply. "What better way to control the masses than to understand precisely what motivates them, what they love, what they fear, what they would sacrifice everything to protect?" Her words haunted An as the first connection day approached. 500 subjects would be linked to Memory City in the initial phase, with the remainder joining in stages over the following week. The connection center resembled a hospital ward, with hundreds of reclined chairs arranged in concentric circles. Each subject would be sedated, then neurally linked to the central server where Memory City awaited. As An supervised the final preparations, Director Trin arrived with several High Council members. "A momentous day," Trin announced. "The beginning of a new era in memory architecture." The first subjects were brought in, including Mrs. Mai and Anchi, who had maintained her dual role as consultant and participant. As they were connected one by one, An monitored the neural feeds from the control center. Each mind appeared as a glowing node in the virtual landscape, leaving trails of light as they explored their new reality. For the first few hours, everything proceeded perfectly. The subjects adapted to Memory City, exploring the crystal towers and aspen forests with wonder. Emotional readings showed predominantly positive responses: awe, joy, relief. But during the second night, the anomalies began. Several subjects reported identical nightmares, dreams of being observed, of thoughts being extracted like teeth. When An reviewed the neural recordings, he found strange patterns in the deep memory centers, signs of external stimulation that didn't match any of his program scenarios. Someone was accessing the subjects directly, bypassing his architectural framework entirely. He brought his findings to Qian, who confirmed his suspicions. "They're using your city as a front," the systems specialist said, "running their own experiments underneath your design. Can you trace the access points?" Qian nodded grimly. "Already have. They lead directly to the High Council's private servers." That night, An used Qian's access codes to enter the restricted server room. What he discovered confirmed their worst fears. The Memory City project was phase 1 of a much larger initiative called Collective Harmony, a plan to develop precise emotional control techniques that could be deployed against the general population. The Council wasn't just studying emotions. They were testing methods to manipulate them on a massive scale. Memory City was their laboratory, and its inhabitants unwitting test subjects in what amounted to psychic weaponization. An copied the evidence to a secure drive, the evidence file that would become their only leverage. As he was about to leave, an alarm triggered, security protocols engaged, locking down the server room. An barely escaped through a maintenance tunnel Qian had identified in the building schematics. The next morning, An arrived to find additional security personnel throughout the facility. Director Trin summoned him immediately. "There was a security breach last night," Trin said without preamble. "Someone accessed restricted servers." "I was home all night," An lied smoothly. "Perhaps one of the system specialists was running diagnostics." Trin's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps. In any case, we're implementing additional safeguards. All staff will undergo memory verification scans before accessing the connection center. Memory verification scans would reveal An's unauthorized activities immediately. He needed to act quickly." When he returned to the lab, he found Anchi waiting, disconnected from Memory City during her rest cycle. "They're accelerating something in there," she whispered. "I can feel it when I'm connected. Emotional pressure, like they're squeezing our minds." "We found evidence." An told her about the Collective Harmony project. "They're developing emotional control techniques. Memory City is just their testing ground." We need to warn the others. And she said, I can communicate with some of them when I'm inside. Too dangerous, An cautioned. If they detect unauthorized communication, they'll isolate you. Then we need to expose them from the outside, she insisted. Release the evidence. Not yet, An said. We need a plan that protects the subjects. If we simply expose the council, what happens to the 500 people already connected to Memory City? Their minds could be damaged or worse. They agreed to wait until Keen could develop a safe disconnection protocol. But time was running out. The next day, full system diagnostics were scheduled, a process that would almost certainly uncover their shadow version of Memory City. An worked through the night, creating a subsystem that would protect the subject's core memories during emergency disconnection. As dawn broke, Keen arrived with grim news. They're onto us, he said. Security pulled my access credentials. I had to use backdoor channels just to get in today. How much time do we have? Hours, maybe less. They've scheduled an emergency council meeting this afternoon. An made his decision. We move now, and she is scheduled to reconnect this morning. She'll have to be our inside agent. The plan was desperate but simple, and she would return to Memory City carrying concealed data packets, fragments of the evidence file embedded in her own memory patterns. Once inside, she would use An's hidden architectural features to broadcast the evidence to all connected subjects simultaneously. Meanwhile, An and Kian would prepare the emergency disconnection system and secure an escape route. If they succeeded, the Council's plans would be exposed, and the subjects would be safely disconnected with their minds intact. If they failed, the best-case scenario was memory wipe. The worst didn't bear contemplating. And Chai was prepped for reconnection, An personally overseeing the process while hiding his anxiety. Remember, he whispered as the neural interface was attached to her temples. Find the crystal bridge in the central plaza. That's the broadcast node. She nodded slightly, her eyes conveying what words couldn't risk. As Anchi's consciousness transferred back into Memory City, An monitored her neural signature. Everything appeared normal, her mind rejoining the virtual world without incident. Inside Memory City, Anchi navigated the gleaming streets toward the central plaza. The world An had created was truly beautiful. Towers of shifting crystal capturing and refracting light. Streets lined with flowering trees that never wilted. Skies of perpetual sunset gold. If only it hadn't been built on deception. She reached the plaza, where a bridge of pure crystal arched over a reflecting pool. This was the broadcast node An had described, a feature that appeared decorative, but actually connected to every sector of Memory City simultaneously. And she placed her hands on the bridge's central pillar, activating the hidden interface. She began the process of unpacking the evidence data from her memory patterns and formatting it for broadcast. In the control center, Anj watched anxiously as Anchi's neural signature showed the characteristic patterns of memory extraction. To anyone else monitoring, it would appear as standard integration activity, a subject simply accessing personal memories to orient themselves in the virtual space. But An knew she was extracting the embedded evidence files. The process was delicate and dangerous. One wrong pattern could corrupt the data or, worse, damage her own memory structures. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. On the monitors, security officers began flooding into the connection center. System anomaly detected, announced an automated voice. Unauthorized data transfer in progress. Emergency protocols engaged. An's hands flew across the controls, trying to protect Anchi's connection while simultaneously preparing the emergency disconnection system. Keen had disappeared, hopefully to secure their escape route as planned. Director Trin burst into the control center, flanked by security personnel. Stop all connections immediately, he ordered. Isolate the infected nodes. We can't, An protested, feigning confusion. A sudden disconnection could cause permanent neural damage. That's a risk we'll have to take, Trin snapped. This is a Level 1 security breach. As security moved to forcibly remove him from the controls, Ange activated the emergency protocol he'd prepared. Throughout Memory City, subjects would begin receiving memory protection shields, invisible neural barriers that would preserve their core identities during disconnection. On the monitors, he could see and she had reached the broadcast point. She stood at the center of the crystal bridge, arms outstretched as data flowed from her mind into the architecture of Memory City itself. One by one, the other glowing nodes representing connected subjects began to pulse with new awareness. The evidence was spreading, revealing the Council's true purpose to every mind connected to the system. "What is she doing?" Trin demanded, watching the cascade of activity across the neural map. "Stop her!" "I can't," An said honestly. "She's using the architectural framework itself. The only way to stop it would be to collapse the entire city." "Then collapse it," Trin ordered. "Authorization override Trin Alpha 7. A new interface appeared on the main screen. The emergency termination protocol. It would instantly sever all connections and delete Memory City entirely. Hundreds of minds would be violently ejected, many likely suffering serious psychological damage. An had seconds to decide. If he allowed the termination, subjects would be protected by his shields, but the evidence would be lost. If he prevented it, the evidence would spread, but subjects might be harmed in the resulting chaos. In that moment of decision, fragmented memories surfaced in An's mind. A young boy with his face, laughing as they built sandcastles together. His brother, erased from his mind but not from reality. How many others had the Council similarly violated? An entered his own override code, locking down the termination protocol. "I can't let you do that, Director." Trin's face contorted with rage. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. This goes beyond memory architecture. This is the future of social harmony itself." "You mean social control," An countered, "using harvested emotions to manipulate the population." Security officers moved to restrain him, but not before An activated the final phase of their plan, transferring control of Memory City to a secure server network Keen had prepared. On the monitors, the neural map suddenly transformed. Instead of a centralized system controlled from the facility, Memory City now existed as a distributed network spread across thousands of nodes. The Council couldn't terminate it without shutting down the entire global neural infrastructure, an impossible action. "What have you done?" Trin whispered, watching his control literally dissolve before his eyes. "Given it back to the people it belongs to," An replied, as security dragged him away. The consequences came swiftly. An was arrested for sabotage and unauthorized access. Keen disappeared entirely, presumably gone underground through his network of system hackers, inside Memory City. And she continued broadcasting the evidence, revealing the Council's plans to every connected mind. But something unexpected happened. Instead of chaos or panic, the connected subjects began to organize. Using An's architectural framework, they created secure communication channels and formed a collective decision-making system. Memory City transformed from a controlled experiment into a self-governing community. As news of the Council's true intentions spread, public opinion turned against the Memory Architects Unit. Protests erupted outside facilities worldwide. Demands for transparency and regulation grew louder each day. After 2 weeks in detention, An was surprised to be released, outside the security center. And she waited, physically present rather than connected to Memory City. "How?" he asked simply. "Public pressure," she explained as they walked. When the evidence spread beyond Memory City, the Council couldn't contain it. They're facing global investigations now. And the subjects? Most have chosen to remain connected, at least temporarily. They're reforming Memory City into something new, a truly collaborative space where memories are shared by choice, not coercion. And she led him to a small apartment where Kian waited with an older man, whose face triggered a shock of recognition in An. "Hello, brother," the man said softly. Tears filled An's eyes as fragments of memory aligned with the reality before him. Min, he whispered his brother's name, feeling the weight of its absence from his life. They didn't kill me, Min explained. They used me, testing their memory manipulation techniques, seeing how far they could push the human mind. All these years? An struggled to reconcile the brother he couldn't remember with the man before him. I never stopped looking for you, Min said. When the evidence files were released, I finally found you. In the days that followed, the Memory Architects Unit underwent complete restructuring. Director Trin and several High Council members were arrested for human rights violations. The remaining projects were placed under international oversight. Memory City continued to exist, but transformed. Rather than a controlled experiment, it became a voluntary community where people could experience shared reality without sacrificing autonomy. The subjects renamed it Memory Commons, a place where memories were treasured rather than harvested. And she and Kian established a new initiative, the Open Memory Library, dedicated to helping people recover memories that had been altered or suppressed. Mrs. Mai became their first success story, regaining decades of experiences that had been locked away by previous experiments. For An, the most profound journey was rebuilding his relationship with Min. Each recovered memory of their childhood brought both pain and healing, the truth of what had been taken from them alongside the joy of what they had once shared. 6 months after the fall of the original memory architects, An stood before the entrance to the Open Memory Library, a physical building housing their neural connection centers. Above the door, a simple phrase was inscribed, "The truth of memory belongs to those who lived it." Inside, people came to recover what had been taken, to share what they wished to preserve, and to build new memories untainted by manipulation or control. An no longer built worlds for others to inhabit. Instead, he created tools for people to rebuild their own internal landscapes. The last of the former Memory City subjects had finally disconnected, taking with them the knowledge and experiences they had gained. The virtual city itself remained, maintained now as a historical record and cautionary tale. As An prepared to close the library for the evening, and she joined him by the window, overlooking Neo Hanoi. The acid rain had cleared, revealing a rare glimpse of stars above the city lights. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Creating entire worlds?" An considered the question. "Sometimes. But I've learned that real memories, even painful ones, are more valuable than perfect illusions." "And your brother? How are the recovered memories coming?" "Slowly," An admitted. "But each one feels like reclaiming a piece of myself I didn't know was missing." Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, millions of minds carrying billions of memories, each one unique and irreplaceable. In the 22nd century's overcrowded reality, the most precious resource wasn't space or energy, but the authenticity of human experience. As he locked the library doors, An thought about the thousands whose memories had been manipulated by the Council over the years. Their work had only just begun. But for the first time since he could remember, truly remember, he felt he was building something worth preserving. Not a perfect world of crystal and light, but something far more valuable. A future where memories belong to those who lived them, where minds remained sovereign territory, and where the architecture of thought served those who dwelled within it. The evidence files had revealed a truth beyond the Council's experiments. That memory itself was not merely a record of the past, but the foundation of identity and the blueprint for all possible futures. And that was a world worth building, one reclaimed memory at a time.